Hello?
Ezekiel, I'm John Martin, and I appreciate the little window of time. And I couldn't hear very well in the car this morning. But I really honestly just had two questions, and mainly from my historical perspective. The question I really had, what led you to use heat as a flame from your torch to fuse different metals together or to heat compounds, whatever they might be, to make them more active? Was that something that you did on your own, or did you follow any of the work? The previous work I know was from Japan, where people would heat volcanic rock, and that would make them better. And I'm just interested in what led you to move in that direction.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what it is. And the second question I had was what temperature. I don't know if you're using propane, acetylene, Brown's gas, or whatever. You don't have a very hot flame, but do you? Anyhow, so I'll tell you more about the volcanic rock material, but I'm just interested that you chose the idea of using heat to either make an alloy, fuse two different metals together, or to change compounds. And I'm just fascinated why you had the smarts to decide to do that.
A couple of questions back in a sense is, what did you find? How have your gifts been working for you, and what did you find from them?
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I can't explain. What I generally, I tell you what I know.
Or I should say the samples.
No, that's fine. So many things can put a dynamic activity into water. I have the choice of either that. So my conclusion was that you took regular rock material and then you fuse different materials on top of that, and that I was comfortable to say, yes, this has that very broad-based putting energy into water, but not at the level of activity that I see in water or in alcohol even, that can occur when I've used some dipolar type compounds in the water, even if I remove it. So that's my reaction was the focus can be on the wide availability of energies. It's a very time-consuming process that you do. I'm very appreciative of the effort, but I did not see something that would blow my mind away and say, wow, look at this. This is super duper. The super duper one that I've come across, best of all, was that product that was changed, the name changed to NSL, but it was Hansi, and it was a 1 in 10,000 dilution of a herbal mixture that has it. And the other one that I do, if I steam water over like a Van de Graaff generator, and that's also very very powerfully activated, but not practical. And in terms of practicality, I like visiting a ranch in San Marcos down in Southern California, where the water from a very deep well is naturally activated. And what's making that process interesting is linkage to a center being set up called TERI, T-E-R-I, that is 20 acres center for disabled people.
Nice.
And it's half finished. They've got $25 million into it, but I've met with them a couple of times about saying, look, you have the patients and the clients, and when things become available, such as water from the ranch, let's do studies to show benefits, because for all of their interventions, all the services they provide, they do not quantify them, that they intend to. They have 900 clients a day that they service. So I'm hopeful that that would be a very convincing way of bringing up benefits. But I was not anticipating bringing your devices, on board with them. But I am convinced.
So the things that I'd sent to you, John, were the stuff that you kept asking me about the humic acid or pumice being activated. That's why I'd sent you the pumice stone that had, in the study that I had found that they had done with it, they had used feldspar and so forth like that. So I had melted peridot, agate, techite, moldavite, labradorite, moldavite, garnet, to that specimen, also with blue tourmaline, green tourmaline, some titanium pieces, clay fulgurite, even some clay that I had just for my ground I had put on there. That was just to show you the difference of kiln firing and other things like that. And then the little shungite piece that I had melted with borosilicate glass and other things. That mostly, because we haven't talked in a year, actually being able to show you how to use those things besides the other stuff that I make that's specifically for activating water, if you wish to say. I've not ever shown or sent to you or we've talked about. I just made those things that you kept questioning me about, and so I made them and sent them to you.
Sure.
I always like to try to figure out
I
how a person used them, because, as you know, type 3 shungite that I'd sent to you, the smaller piece that was not pumice, that is used in water structuring and so forth. It itself, it emits the energy that structures water because it's the electricity that it generates itself, as you know. But I was wondering of the mineral content and things in the scan that we had provided, if you had tested it yourself to see. Otherwise, I was trying to figure out what you were asking about them, because if one does not understand the work that I'm doing or the use of doing such, like we have to illustrate to the persons that procure our stuff from us on how to use them or to use it to structure their water, you're not going to find, with all the observations we have of clients writing, that it changed their life or changed their water and so on and so forth. So I find that interesting of that retrospect.
So much to.
But on the thing of asking me on what got me to use the flame is the fuel that I use, because I don't use sodium chloride to activate my reactor. I use a liquid metal fuel, and I extract it from crystals. And some of my fuels that I use, I do lattice-enabled nuclear experiments, or I do low-energy nuclear experiments that I've done over the years. That it takes some of the process of Linner takes 6 months or longer or shorter. I've gotten to where I make my fuels in a shorter time, but yet this was my senior project back when I was in high school. For me, the fuel that I use, because I was trying to explain to people fully autonomous self-organizing systems, why I started using the flame and heating different crystals up, melting garnets in the tourmaline or in the pumice, or grinding down scooterite, polisite, different crystals, like say taking 8 of the platonic shapes of the crystalline lattice, grinding them down, and then heating them, and letting them reform themselves. Like, one of the things I like to see is when I work with supposed amorphous crystalline lattices. Amorphous means it has no crystalline structure. It's What trips me out is watching it structure itself and do exactly what I've been trying to explain to people for the last 28 years of my life. That um, how would I I'm sorry, my mind is trying to put together a way for you to understand, but also what people are seeing as a byproduct of what I'm trying to explain in a sense of the intrinsic rattle that these things have, but that where that knowledge comes from, if you wish to say. So using the flame and showing someone physically in hand, being able to allow them to use the torch or whatever aspect I'm doing to cause that perturbation for them to either heat up or cool, to watch them aggregate themselves into a structure or jump. Like the farthest I've seen a piece of boron, like I was using evaporative glass tube, which is borosilica glass, watching it jump and structure itself instead of like how glass is supposed to get heated and turn into a globule or go flat. This stuff is jumping, like it'll jump almost a half an inch to connect to another piece. And I keep getting these certain patterns that I only find in clay soil fulgurite or fulgurites, like plasmoidal discharges. And so the this aspect of this work that I'm doing right now is just a continuation with the flame. Is like my wife uses a hydrogen or a brown gas. You cannot melt pumice, obsidian, titanium. You can't do any of that stuff that I'm doing. With brown gas or propane or acetylene. You can't do any of that. Like literally, it's physically impossible. Besides being able to hold it, you cannot hold. No, John. There's no way physically possible for a human being to hold a piece of stone and use a propane torch, an acetylene torch, or any of those heat sources and not have a glove on. If you watch the video that I show the process, besides while I'm making it, I use an EP5 Olympus camera with a macro lens, 60mm macro lens. I document everything while I'm making it with one hand taking a pictures, but also with the camera of my phone videoing it. And I show that I'm holding it, and I ask people, what temperature is this flame getting to supposedly get this thing hot? But if it's that hot, how am I holding it with just my flesh to also putting that same flame to my hand and it not burn me? Do you understand? So I'm saying,
I understand that. And
how
brown
is
gas doesn't do it.
no
But some
nothing
other metallic gas
no you, what I'm trying to express is I make my own fuel, but the flame that is coming out, if you wish to say, is conscious interactive. I'll just put it in that manner because, again, there is no way for you to hold a titanium crystal and melt it down when it takes over 2,000 degrees Celsius for that to melt. But I have videos of me doing it live on Facebook and on TikTok till TikTok blocked me because they said I was showing people dangerous acts and so forth. And I'm like, I'm just I'm just trying to get the information out because Facebook blocks me also. Or I'm like, I'm just trying to get this information out that this is possible. Like I don't understand why, but I make my own fuel. The Brown's gas and so forth, again, my wife uses a hydrogen extractor. We have several videos where I use what I do as a comparison of who can, say, melt a piece of moldavite, melt a piece of shungite. No one's ever lit shungite on fire, so that piece of shungite that you have, sir, that I sent to you is a one of a kind in the world because if you look up, they don't know how to do any of that stuff with the stuff. And be it that it has all the amino acids of left-hand spin life and also right-hand spin life and all the sulfide archaea that produce all of our metals that we have in our world. It'd be interesting to see what your analysis scan is of it and what it puts into the water because that is something that I make structured what also magnets because I use enough magnets to where I do magnetolysis or electrolysis with magnets. There are ways, I don't know if you've ever not known of that term, but that's or use, but you can do electrolysis in water with just magnets. That's one of the things that I use with shungite to make certain filters that I do to make stuff that when people used to try to buy the water that we provided from our shop, but I just gave them the crystals and tried to explain to them these are the same crystals that I'm grinding down and using as my fuel as they restructure themselves on the ionic level. It's interesting to see on the subatomic ionic level because the flame is producing an ion from it. Henceforth, how I have clear glass now has red to it because of the gold, blue because of the cesium, or cesium, or silver, or platinums, and so forth that are extracted from the mineral itself. That's in the water that now is encapsulated in the glass, and it's very interesting using those with placing it in water and so forth, or again looking at the hues that are in it. You see such, and I was just interested in seeing lab results, or I even pay for it myself to cross-reference with the scans that we've done in those packets that we'd sent to you, or for each thing that we'd sent or dowsed that show what bulk minerals, if you wish to say, would be found in it in cross-reference if you were to test it in a lab, just to give us reference.
But no, I'm with you. And again, I wish I had all the resources in the lab, et cetera. But I can think along with you and share the concepts, and that's interesting. So,
but that literally is how I came to using the flame. It is something that I'd used years back. I can show you a video from 10 years ago where I was putting together and just using Fe3 fulgurite, which is the rarest type of fulgurite, where lightning strikes a piece of iron on a train track, and a configuration of neodymium magnets and some copper taping from inside of a transformer, and some quartz and other things that are piezoelectric, and the magnetic flux of such, you'll see a flame that's pulsing, but three flames come out, and one of the flames be green because of the copper, the Tsiyu ion coming from the heat coming out of the thing, but I'm not using any type of fuel except the minerals themselves. And from doing such, again, watching it, I don't know if it's type of synesthesia or whatnot, sir. The way that my eyes see the sounds, but then also colors that come off of stuff, I try to describe to people it's what I draw out and have been drawing out. I post pictures of my theory that I drew out when I was a kid, showing how to do this stuff. And that's all I'm doing is just doing something that I had an idea of when I was a child. Again, melting the crystals down was something that it's taken me a minute to get the fuel to be able to do such, to show a person that you can take crystals, and if you wish to say, like I asked people, how I'm melting pumice but holding it in my hand. Like, how hot do you have to get pumice rock to not get in the study they talk about it welding, but they don't talk about it how do you say that properly? Becoming completely glass or liquefied. They don't talk about that, or that temperature. That's how hot if you notice on that piece of pumice that I sent you where it looks like obsidian glass, and melted the other crystals to it, how hot do you think that flame got to do such, but yet I'm holding that crystal while I'm doing such, and without a glove? I can send you the video link and pictures of my hand literally holding that. So one has to ask oneself, what is going on there? Because it's not the same as propane, because you can't hold propane and heat it. I'm sorry, you can't hold an object with your flesh, with just your flesh, and heat it with acetylene, or heat it with propane, or heat it with any known heat source that man uses for welding or as a fire perturbation, as we know it. Do you understand?
No, I totally agree. I still don't know what you mean by metallic flame. In other words, what ignites the metallic material that gives you the flame? It seems like you might be I mean, again, I'm not certain what it's interesting. I don't know specifically, Ezekiel, what you mean by metallic, the flame that you generate that has the property of melting and activating all these other pumice type materials. In other words, but I don't know what is fed into your
Say
flame.
for instance, my flame is coming from electricity. You know, the same way that you would use a dry cell. I have a 13 plate dry cell that I'm sending 24 volts through with 7 amps off a solar panel. That's how I'm doing what I'm doing. Instead of using sodium chloride as my catalyst, I'm using a mixture of ionic silver at a certain level and ionic copper that I've made myself at a certain level. I do not buy any of my solutions from the store. I make them myself from ores that I've procured or mined myself and or ground down or...
So you can make silver and copper flammable, which I didn't know you could, but you can do it with your electrical arc forming. That's what I'm sensing. So you can create the electrical arc for sure, but you're then igniting gas coming from the silver copper. And I had no idea that you were doing anything along that line, but I want to go back and talk about the heat stuff a bit, but that seems to me to be very original, what you're doing by using electricity to ignite silver, copper as a flame.
Also gold, I do platinum, I do all the elements. I also get opposite elements because, as you know, the flame is releasing ions, and whatever you're hitting with that flame is your solid or your anode, and so you get LENR, or low energy nuclear reactions.
Yeah, I got you.
If you understand. So depending on what you use as inference, like oh gosh, I hurt myself pretty good year before last, where I used the pulsite. I extracted the cesium from pulsite. It's a crystal that has 40% ion of cesium in it, or cesium if you wish to say. And as you know, that's how solar panels work. I had my mix of cesium a little too high, and my high frequency solar panels literally burst into flames.
Wow.
When I was melting a piece of titanium crystal year before last. I have titanium in my arm. When I went out to interact with the fire, I got brain damage a little bit. I got hurt pretty good. The arm of mine that has titanium absorbed the energy. It was really weird. My wife and I got the fire out, but the energetic discharge of it was interesting. I'll just say I had all the hair on my body, but for somehow my body absorbed a bunch of energy, like I did when I was working with a piece of halite opal, and I had to figure out a different metal mixture because I had released the uranium that's inside of halite opal, why it glows in the dark, because it has uranium ion in it, so it glows. There's also plutonium in it. I was making a borosilica glass pennant, and as you know, borosilica has to get about 2,000 degrees to 1,800 degrees before it's malleable. That's what I was saying. It's really interesting because the stuff I hold with my hand, but I'm able to melt borosilica glass, but then I accidentally had released through a gamma burst. I didn't realize it until like 5 minutes later. My body had looked like I was sunburnt. My eyes had turned purple. I'd gotten radiation poisoning from the release of the energetics from this piece of halite opal. And now I figured out how ways of shielding myself, or I should say the metal mixture that I mix. Because even my wife, she when she did it, she had a couple clients that we do with our dowsing that were over, and the husband was a welder, and he was wearing a Rolex, and I was trying to explain to him about the fourth phase of water and so forth. And when doing such, my liquid fuel or like you see in my posts, I describe it as I use a liquid metal fuel. That's the only thing that I do is flood through liner. And that's why the Quiche Foundation people used to annoy me years back for the last 10 years, because they started copying my methods on how I make my stuff, but doing it in a way where the fuel, they're getting people to ingest this stuff now, and it's hurting people because of the way that they make it. It's not the same way that I do. They use salts and so forth, and as you know, when you do electrolysis or ionic form of any type of metals and so forth in water, if you use salts, the ions go into the salt, and when you rinse the salts away, you just get the colloids. And depending on the electrical continuity of the water, the pH, the oxidative reduction potential of the water, it's nothing more than like distilled water. And instead of having a good chelia for your body, it has a reverse of it where it strips your body of stuff and makes people get metal poisoning and other things like such. So it's been an issue with those people. You'd sent me a link asking about them, and those persons have been making things where before COVID had come out, they weren't having people drink their silver zinc cuperite mix, to after they started getting people to drink the silver or the cuperite, their zinc and copper with sodium chloride and salt that they have people use to make their mix that they're doing.
We have skin.
That's why I make specifically my stuff the way I've done since I was a child, trying to show people if you do it like this, it's like sand compiling itself in an hourglass. The intrinsic rattle of this stuff and the inference of yourself will always make something that is compatible to your own being. Doing it the other way, you get, alloys and so forth, things that aren't true. When I do my linear experiments, I don't get so much alloys. It's like when I can show you a piece of silver and copper and glass that I welded together, and science still hasn't been able to do such except with pico lasers, put glass and metal together, and I don't understand why. It's the same with this stuff that I'm using with my flame. I can put a piece of glass and wood with metal, the same as the Hutchinson's effect, while I was talking with him over this last 2 years about things of the different sound harmonics that may be being emitted somehow from the flame, because there's something interacting there differently than what we understand as heat, because I'm able to hold this stuff in my hand. I have my wife holding it in her hand, she's working with it. The other people that have come in that are welders, 'cause I like showing them where I'm like, what did you learn in welding school? Because here's this right here, you can hold it, and now you can put this with this together. And as you learned in school, to get this to melt, copper melts at 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Silver is 900 degrees. Molten is at 1100. It vaporizes off at 1300. And depending on what your mind wishes to do with what you're holding in your hand, you can do that. Why I say it's conscious interactive. It's really interesting.
No, no, fascinating. So that's a very neat topic, that idea of energy separate from heat coming and having all the molecular manipulation. But let me tell you where I'm coming from so that you understand.
Yes.
Where I'm somewhat excited by the benefits that can occur. There was a gentleman in Japan back in 85 or something. There were two of them, but I'll think of his name in a minute. Anyhow, he just published, and he put a patent out on it, so it was there, that if he took the volcanic rock material from Kyushu Island, which is an island, southern part of Japan, where it's known for its health spas and health water good springs and so forth. But he took the volcanic rock material, heated it, didn't specify exactly, but around 1100, 1200 degrees centigrade, it performed far better. And what he did first was pulverized it, then heated it, and then let it fall back into small granules. And they still market it as a super growth enhancing stone. They even make baths where people lay in this stone material. They thought it was beneficial because it would release infrared radiation, but that's as far as they took it.
Yeah, my wife and I had looked into that, and I had just posted a thing on such with my work, But again, I took a solid piece of pumice, not something heated in a kiln, that I held in my hand and melted crystals to it, which took it way higher than they did in their study. You understand what
No,
I'm
I
saying,
understand.
too?
Well, let me just go through. And I know what you're doing is so much more original than anything that I've come up with. Anyhow, that was one. The second.
Therefore, the benefits would
Observe.
should be, if not better, if not different, than the kiln process that they use of the infrared light.
Absolutely, and they did use a kiln process. And then I came across a person you may know of, a Dr. Higa, Higa, who's in Okinawa in Japan, and he does the same thing in making ceramic material from a lot of the lava that's around Okinawa. I mean, all these places in Japan have lava, and describes his pellets as water activating. And I haven't got any yet, but I will. I did get some of that first stone from Kyushu Island. And then there's another gentleman who's typical. I mean, these business people. He's based in Hong Kong and took the word Kiko, Kiko, and also grinds material down, volcanic material, heats it up around 1100 degrees centigrade. And that too, when it's repelleted as pellets, works. And when I say works, I know that now. And I dislike their business model and absolutely dislike his saying, I'm the inventor and I deserve 60%, 70%, whatever. I have no financial arrangement, but I see the way he tends to screw people, which is why I've known about it for 12 years. He's not been successful up to now. But recently, he came across a couple of people in Texas, one of whom, as a contractor, has a good business sense and is starting to make contact with people. And at long last, they're doing really significant studies. So a study was done in Vietnam where the comparison was 100 hectares treated and 100 hectares non-treated area, and the rice productivity literally went up 30%. There's some other changes, but it was phenomenal. And so this is definitive evidence that and all they used were 40 pellets in the hectare. And it had 100 hectares, so 40, 100, 4,000. But it worked like a charm. And I'm saying to myself that this information is so valuable, forget about them not knowing what it is. And then I say, what is working when you're heating any of these materials? As you described earlier, you look at any of this volcanic rock material, it's a mixture of different minerals, and it's all relatively small grouping or domains because it cools so quickly as lava. But when you heat it up to like 1100, 1200 degrees, some of the components liquefy and then they coalesce into larger islands of that kind of material. Once we get there, then we've got more dipolar type activity because we've got a larger area with a particular electronegativity. And that's the difference I see now from the heated versus the non-heated material. The non-heated material has a lot of very fine structures in it, but they're all disparate all over the place. When you heat it, some of the material is at the melting point and that they coalesce. The whole rock doesn't do it, but portions of it do.
Yeah.
And then that's the sense I'm saying, well, the obvious one then is to take regular pumice from, the hardware store and do the same thing, or any of these compounds. that you have,
What
if you heat it at the right temperature, those that go into liquid will tend to coalesce with one another.
Yes. To an extent. I mean, say the specimen that I sent to you was a piece from Tahoe Basin, and you can find garnet or peridot is what naturally you find in the formations that you were describing is angulations of garnet or peridot. That's how you get it in the natural, in its mother rock. Our host rock is actual lava or pumice. Are you following me?
Yeah, what I gather is, as you said earlier, the feldspars, and there are 1,000 different formations of mineral, including the quartz, which tends to form more from the volcanic ash, and then later you can get the clays.
If I may,
yes,
there is 1,000 different named forms that we use for classification, but quartz is only a pyramidal shape, so therefore there is not 1,000 different types of platonic shapes. There's still only 13. Labradorite is a feldspar. Moonstone is a feldspar. You understand what I'm getting at?
Oh yeah, no, I understand. And again, just only to show that I'm keeping up with you,
and their shape is triclinic.
The perovskites, like fluorite and so forth, they're really fascinating barium titanate because they take on that really interesting cuboidal with hexagon internal structure, all characteristically piezoelectric, magnetoelectric. It's just beautiful structuring of these crystals, and when you melt them and then reform, you can get bigger and bigger crystals, as it were, forming.
So think of this
carry out more activity.
On this note, on that very note that you're talking about, fluoroapatite crystals, which is fluorite and apatite mixed together, is where in the 1850s someone had figured out to crush them down. So say our fluorohydrogen or the fluorohydrocarbons that they phased out and have been trying to phase out that depleted the ozone is nothing more than crushed fluorite in refrigerant since the 1850s. So if you take that in respect of kinetic energy, being able to just in our refrigerator, as you know, it goes K, Fa or FC, calcium fluoride. If you remove the C to just have a pure fluoride, or same with fluoride, why our water messes with this because they add the calcium to it with the fluoride, which comes from fluorite. When you use fluorite refrigerant, it's where you get the freezer burn on things that have calcium ion in it because it strips it from it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I've been trying to explain to people for years is the square molecule of the freon of the fluorite in freon state, be it's so small, the molecular level on that macro level, as you would say, you know this information, that the surface area is larger. And so when going down on those levels and so forth, again, with just the 75 years of us using it as a refrigerant in mass scale, the ozone was depleted.
Yes.
And now we're using that inside of our water as something to decalcify or calcify, if you wish to say, in the opposite way of the pituitary, or dumb the body down, because the main thing of slow down, mind. The main observation that one should take away from such the coalescence of such metals through the humic or whatnot being observed being better, or the crystalline structures reforming themselves into their intrinsic rattles where they're acknowledged as being changed. You have to see its oxidative reduction potential, which has been changed through the heating because it's been oxidized, or it's been able to give life to where those if you wish to say, chaos and physicerium worms and so forth, things that eat certain energies that defecate out sulfide archaea or certain sulfide archaea that when they're given certain types of perturbations or energies, they defecate out higher forms of ionic metals or metals in the bulk that are able to be seen in the lab instead of having to be reconstituted by different forms of either electricity or through heat exchange for the crystalline structure to be is how would you say it properly? It's rattled to come around to where a person actually notices that there's something there, if you understand what I mean. Sometimes certain things can be seen through heat or through ultraviolet radiation, how like stuff glows in the dark and we go, oh, we didn't realize it was there, but that's still, that form of perturbation is a type of oxidation that helps that release of energy form of the things that work on those spectrums. So for me, I've always noticed it's always about the warp or oxidative reduction potential of whatever I'm working with and its zeta potential, of understanding those two things in my liquid metal field that I use with my flame for the reverse of its ions for the colloid in the piece that I'm making, if you understand, because we're still in water, so I'm still part of that conduit of the electricity being sent through my wand. Something that I picked up on from working at AmeriGas. It's a propane company that back 20 years ago when I worked there when I was a kid, the carousel unit that we put in to be able to do the propane tank super fast, if we weren't grounded and ground striped and all that kind of stuff, the way that we figured out how to get rid of that hydrostatic discharge of that inert gas going through and into the tanks, like, had to be figured out so that the compressed natural gas vehicles could be formulated properly without there having people getting shocked and such when they're loading them. I carry that over into my mind with me being part of the circuit, but also not just myself saying that it's like my secret, but once a person understands that, the other person's my wife, other people that have come up here and done this work with me or experimented by me showing the flame aspect. Otherwise, a lot of persons have tried to do my liquid metal fuel part, and I try to explain to them, it's up to up. How would I say properly? It's like Dr. Emoto, rest in peace, work, where the water droplet taken from me, taken from you, taken from my wife, taken from 1,000 other people. It all looks differently because of our vibrations. But we can harmonize and emit the same vibration, but there's still that signatory vibration of myself, how you can separate me from the others, if you wish to say. We can still see the same observation of that vibration, but there's still that snowflake aspect of each person. And trying to explain that to a person where they will get the same results, but that watermark of themselves is still in it, which is different than myself. So, in aspect, for my work, it's the only thing that I've been able to find that I would say isn't scientifically repeatable. It is repeatable, but not in the aspect for me and true, because my watermark is different than yours and vice versa and so forth. For
I'm with you.
if you understand what I mean, I've been able to teach other people this, what I've done. It's just me trying to get them to understand that now that they've done it, it's theirs, and it's through their vibration of themselves, their consciousness, them working on themselves, their surroundings, all those kind of things like that playing a part with emitting or making, in simple terms, that type of kelia, if you wish to say, to do what you wish to do, or be able to be sensitive to notice that it's there, if you wish to say, or someone showing you that.
Okay, no, that's fine. So on a practical point of view, and I see the distinction between the frontier where you're at with that and just practical. The fact that the fellow Dr. Higa, who's in his 80s or whatever now, but his son is taking over the company, since they have found benefit in their porcelain, in their ceramic material, this product tested in the rice works, the Kyushu Island stuff works. there seems, from my point of view, an obligation to just go ahead and do no more than promote their products, and if there's more than one, that will get the price down, or show
I would almost like to see
the simplicity that you can just apply heat to
yes, I would
the
almost like to
pumice,
see if I
and you
could take.
can make it more electrically active.
I would like
What
to
I'm-
see if I could get one of their products and complete its oxidization, be it the way that my flame works, to get it to go to glass. I think it would be more energetic instead of just heating it just with a kiln, but actually completely transmuting it, if you understand.
Yeah, well, no, I'm happy to send you some of these pellets.
I would love to
that,
see
these-
if I would be able to do like I did with the pumice stone that I sent to you, not affix stuff to it, but where you seen where I just heated it, where it turned into that type of glass, to change several of them and see if there's a difference with those ones that have been heated as such to those ones that haven't been.
Yeah. Well, let me bring another concept in. When you have two materials adjacent to each other, whether it's copper and lead, or some of these different minerals that have different electronegativity values, then one will acquire more negative charges than the other, as it were, be relatively negative compared to the other ones, more relatively positive. And then wait enough time, there'll be a discharge between the two.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gentleman there in Northern California, again, I'll talk to sometime, Tommy Mercer, and he will show discharges, electrical discharges occurring from the gems, and so that he also heats, and he just seemingly heats it with a regular stove type, where you're not even in an airtight kiln. But when you do heat them, their crystals change in their activity, and now they have an ability to spontaneously give discharges. And the same applies to if he heats shungite or if he heats aluminum. That
Shungite already gives out its own electricity, though.
But only if you add something to it.
No, it's not. It's
No,
shungite's not piezoelectric. Shungite's always emitting electricity.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to explain to you.
No. Well, stay with me for a moment. So what I think about that is,
think of this: is the stuff in the liquid tube that I sent to you is liquefied shungite. No one's ever done that. That's one of my other fuels that I use is shungite liquefied.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me say something. What I'm aware of is all of these telluric currents is one term used, but all of the magnetic and electrical currents that go through. If I take a long pole, like a steel rod, 3 foot long, magnetize it, and then just let it hang, I can see over the periods of different days, some days will be pointing slightly different from north-south, another day slightly different the other way. In other words, there's a lot of influences coming into the environment, so that when shungite is spontaneous releasing activity, it may be that the energy for that activity is coming from the environment. But there's no question that shungite is good, and I think that heating shungite makes it better. I think heating all of these things can make them more electrically active. That's been the conclusion I've come to. And the other one, of course, is if you have copper in the ground going up high, there's an electrical difference between the voltage at the top versus the ground level. And again, you're going to get periodic discharges
Yes.
from that, and that's kind of like the whole growing field of electroculture nowadays.
And it's the stuff that I introduced you to.
George White.
Charles White that I introduced you to.
Okay, because
if you remember, I'm the one that introduced you to that information, sir.
Yeah, well, what I know is
because if you remember why I had done that was he, through my explanation to you, was who inspired Albert Abrams, rest in peace, the radionics practitioner in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Who inspired?
I know who you mean.
Who inspired Don Paris, who made my wife's SE5, what we use to douse you and what we use to douse our products.
Okay, no, super. The person I've been impressed by is a French gentleman, Van Dong. And even though he gets a bit concerned of other people taking his ideas or whatever, but he's been very open about the historical activity in electroculture. People building different pyramids and so forth. And I think, again, it's simple enough to say just picking up, transforming the circuitry that the Earth is experiencing, but no different than Tesla with his free energy. Tesla wanted to have
making the proper
communication.
Making the proper longitudinal waveguides is all you have to make, and everything is there.
Yeah, no, and that's what I think the time is now to try to do the best we can. It might fail.
Sir, you haven't failed. Half of what I've been trying to show online is my work, along with yours, not in a sense of plagiarism, but opening people up to. In our shop, I used to explain to people and tried to get persons that had autism and so forth, and their kids or an adult, to do the I'm sorry, because of my head injury. It takes me a second to formulate and to slow down my mind down. The red natural dye pigmentation and so forth, we acquired the natural chlorophyll dyes and so forth, and used to try to get people from our community to be a part of that, because a couple of years back I had seen some of your stuff on the stealth-adapted viruses, and myself, a lot of my work has been on that because of my mom's sarcoidosis, which I explained to you years back when we first had talked.
I remember.
Through the studying of such is, again, part of my work of understanding fully autonomous self-organizing systems, because I realized through the way that my mom changed and other things, watching the different pharmacopoeia that she was on and other things, that this stuff was able to go past the blood-brain barrier. And anything that's able to do such and go from giving my mom gut issues to lung issues to messing with her eyes to so on and so forth, all of those have different, if you wish to say, zeta potentialities and electroconductivities of being able to go through those different parts of the body and different, to go into the brain just to go past the blood-brain barrier. You're in water, you're not in blood anymore and so forth. And now my mom is, unfortunately, through her not really working with my stuff, but then working with it now here recently, she's gotten off the opioids. She's being diagnosed with neurosarcoidosis and other things. So again, that is what had intrigued me about some of the work that you had done, and mainly what inspired me in my work, not was to heal my mother and to heal myself, because sarcoidosis is a genetic disease. And I have 2 grandsons now. And so, like the dowsing work and other things that we do, we help persons help overwrite, either through making the proper penance or bulk materials and so forth, help the intrinsic rattle that has to do with the epigenetic markers that Bruce Lipton talks about, that you can control or change and make certain things go away. That's why I've been waiting to try to talk with you, because that is the thing that my work has been about, is making perturbations either through color light or sound or frequencies being able to be encased and embodied into a crystalline lattice that can either be given to water or in the interstitial water yourself of your own body, and then have that be reflected out from you by biophosphorylation and other things. Why this last set of pennants and metamaterial that I had put together glows in the dark and so forth, because of those higher frequencies. I found it interacts on the body and makes a person sweat more of that impurities out that we found with persons. Like when you see a person with ASM, the autonomous sensory meridian get activated and they get the goosebumps and so forth, through working with our stuff, and we see them sweat, and their scan changes, if you wish to say, their mineral content, even their allopathic medicine test results show difference after a person just holding or drinking or just coming into contact with a lot of the stuff that we've been trying to express to the person. That not just on an external level, if one is able to change one's internal conscious thought of oneself, because we are a lyotropic liquid crystal that can change either through sympathetic resonance of our own thought belief or through a perturbation from the outside, can change us and make us incur, if you wish to say, what is perceived as an illness, but it's just a different waveform of that kelia that we're talking about to heal. It's us just releasing that into the environment. And there's different ways that one can, if you wish to say, like sound counseling noise headphones, you can anneal that disturbance in the body, either through like those stones, the Keti stones, or making something for someone, or making ionic solutions, or making something that is in the water, the word when applied to the body, ingested or out externally. It's almost like, say for instance, it's in the sense of the persons that go through ambulatoric pain through having a limb taken away, and be giving silver threaded cloth or a sock, and alleviating that pain, because the dielectric field of the body is now made whole, instead of having that opening, that disconnect, that phantom pain.
No,
If you understand what I'm saying. If you've ever tried working with persons like that, because we used to do that in the shop with making different infused waters or program waters that help persons, because we're next to Beale Air Force Base, so we have a lot of soldiers here, active and non-active. So that was another thing that we really tried helping, was active soldiers and non-active soldiers that were damaged from war because of those kelia energetics that are released from being around bombs, the sonar, the radar, all that kind of stuff. We have a lot of documentation and stuff. I'll just say that there's so much that our work, encompassing yours also, in the terms of the healing on all forms of structured water, can do, from getting rid of PTSD in soldiers that just came back from war, to persons with ambulatoric limbs, to persons that were about to lose their limbs, and from using this water topically and ingesting it and so forth, structured. Right next to us, we have the biggest cancer center that was 2 blocks away from our shop, and we had the nurses that would come in to get treatments done on themselves, if not different crystals to place in the water or placed next to their patients, that they realized either on their own or whatnot, if you wish to say, the um, the, the person's intuition from being a nurse in that field so long, that they realized that if they didn't do that, that the person would have died. We had that happen a lot, to where it was just interesting, I'll just say. But we really tried to open people to also your perspective on Kelia, like I was saying, with the different patents that you have out, to the different modalities that you were asking people to be part of. And it was insane, to where we got some people to do it, but they were too scared to reach out to you. And then we got some people that do it in our shop, but we had to facilitate it, because they were like, it's, this is scary, but it's like, you're coming in and you're telling us that the doctor is giving you this, and this is going on in side effects. Like, all we're asking you to do is take a black light and put some natural dye pigmentation on a paper towel and put it in a Ziploc bag, and you'll see that area, biophosphorylate. And it's like, what does that mean? And so
Yeah, no, good
we
on you. I'm
started
glad you've seen that. So that's pretty impressive.
we started providing goji berries and other things like that in our shop to try to get people's diets up so they can actually try to facilitate and conceptualize these concepts, why they would understand. That's what's so hard about what we're trying to explain to people of what we're doing, John, is a lot of the people out there, they're ready for it. It's just, if you wish to say, that higher consciousness of the mineral uptake of the body is not really happening on such a level to where they can put things together. And
As the diets are off.
Yeah, I understand. Well, a couple of just comments on that, and then I'll go back to more practical stuff. There was a lady out of Las Vegas, and she took a technology that somebody, Robert, had, where having computers at the periphery of the room, at the ceiling, all facing into a central point in the room, so that the images would converge into that point. And it's called the energy enhancement system. And she was going on, and I've still got videos from her year 2000. I've known her that long. Last year, one of these individuals who has his own ambition of trying to become an influencer, set up a new channel to compete with.
So she's working on the holographic
Twitter. Well, the bottom line is that he got onto one example and made such a big deal of it, how wonderful, miraculous this person had benefited from spending time in the room with these computers and imaging and so forth, then was followed up by such an interest that he went ahead and said, I won't be involved, but I'll help encourage this technology, and I will take applications who want to set up their own centers and so forth. But what I can tell you is that it went from a nothing, like 3 centers in the country, 3 or 4, to now they have a 10-month waiting list to set up their centers. They've got any number of setups. There might be 30 or 40 of them even now in the country. They've set up on Facebook testimonial pages, so people are writing. The word that they focus on is scalar energy.
Yeah.
And but it's all in that reality of what comprises promotion, advertising, whatever. They again have the silliness of saying that they'll form an organization of different centers and that they have rules such as they won't charge anybody more than $80 per hour for being in a room, which can accommodate so many people. And also that the profit that he's making for charging membership fees, he's going to put to setting up free units in Africa and India and so forth. So it has a little bit of that BS component, but what it does do is show how quickly you can, if done well, convince large numbers of people to get on board, because now it's a hot topic like the electroculture. It becomes a very hot topic on Facebook and people are involved. What I know is that that Kalia word that you pronounce slightly different, but that Kalia concept applies to them. And I've known this lady for a long time and really interacted with her a lot. And that it's the same argument that the body has alternate energy sources than calories and food. And those energy sources are particularly beneficial when you don't get enough energy from regular metabolism. And they're also particularly useful in elevating the way the brain works from a competitive Darwinian survival of the fittest survival mode to somewhat a higher level of functioning. So we're on that. What I want to restate again, that there is this center down towards San Diego that anyhow, that is designed to cater to 900 and a bit more people with disabilities on a daily basis. So when it does come time for applying some of the work that you're doing in a larger scale, there would be patients attending that program, and I can have institution review board and all that for the programs. The other one that's of interest to mention to you, I mentioned that the most active solution, and the one for which I know most about in terms of clinical use, was developed in Argentina back in the 1990s or so. It cured a gentleman, David Krishna, of his colon cancer. David went down to Argentina to try to buy the rights to this product, was unable to do so, but did recruit a senior technologist working for the gentleman in Argentina, brought him to the US. So he was making his product. I first came across in 1992, told him that even though it was being called a homeopathy, it wasn't working as a homeopathic product, and certainly wasn't working through the immune system because it could suppress viruses. Anyhow, cut a long story short, David, as a businessman, tried unsuccessfully to get it recognized. One of the problems is it had lidocaine in it as one component, which helps prevent the pain, but that was never disclosed, and so they were never in compliance with FDA. Bottom line still, David Kristen died. He had at one stage during his business a partner, David Green, who has a medical degree but not licensed anywhere, does electroacupuncture and then injects this material into the acupuncture sites, and again chooses different sites for different patients. He went back to Argentina and said, look, this David Krishna has now died. Would you like help to get your product into the US? And as best I understand it, they're happy to have help to get their product in. That's a good product in the sense that it's the same as activated water, but I would say that it has more activity. So it's a good gold standard to compare your structured activated water, microstructured water, anything that I might have, or the water that is naturally available from this ranch, also down in San Marcos. So there's a lady there, again, who, as I said, inspired by God in her mind, dug a very deep well, and the water from that well has a great reputation of curing a lot of illnesses in people. So we're thinking of using that water with the people. So things are moving. I'm still more of a researcher than promoting anything. And the reason for the call was because of the heat. But if I had to say what is available for your mum or whatever, this Hansi, Hansi, is a current name, but we'll probably change it to Kalia water somehow. But that would be the best product for your mum or for anyone to be on, because it does have clinical validation.
What we found is the mix that I've made has been the best, because the base of it, they say, is the best thing for persons that have immunological issues, and also with my mom having her intestines removed, the goat stomach, and then it reversed, having the properties that it has with recreating the gut biome and so forth like that. My mom is, again, she doesn't have wasting syndrome. She's gained weight. She's now complaining that she has weight. It's not because of having to take steroids, which she doesn't have anymore. And this helped her get off of Oxycontins.
Okay, good on you. No, that's good. And I'm not quite sure, do you give a name to the water that you're describing, or is that...
Right now, it's not really a water. I mean, it's the thing that I was selling or giving out to people that people were getting was a byproduct from my Linner experiments, if you understand. It was the colloids that came from me having a transmutation of one element to the next. And the issue of using, say, flybacks, some experiments I use 2 or 3 flybacks hooked together, out of a TV. So anywhere between 40 to 250 million kV volts were sent through the water and sent through my anode and my cathode. And the minerals that I used to extract the different metals that were trapped ionically inside of my cathodes and anodes, and with the mixer of the different dust of crystals ground down for using scooterite, polisite, clay soil fulgurite, and silver, and at the end not having that at the end result and so forth, was interesting, I'll just say, to different variations of liquefied shungite, type 1, type 2, type 3. Not so much with the elite or pyroplastic sorbitum is the proper or the geological name. Otherwise, you have Bittman sorbitum, which is conglomerate. But I focus on that mostly because of its use. It's how I got sober from alcohol and other things like that, was the ability that it has in it. And again, it has all the amino acids of left-hand spin and right-hand spin, so if one understands how to extract that. So the black part of it, it's not black, it's the methylene archaea. So it's one of the best things to place in your water because it gets your gut biome back. You stop farting, so as you know, when you fart, you're creating it's like the gentleman you were just talking about that cured himself of colon cancer. When you produce oxygen or anything like that and your gut archaea is off and you're not uptaking your metalloproteins properly to the methylene archaea being off, you start producing oxygen. And be it that there of a time when there was no oxygen and you're living symbiotically inside your system, you start producing oxygen, they start doing right-hand spin and causing what is called as cancer. There's easy ways of changing that perturbation of their spin. Myself, a classmate of mine, her work, she just got accredited for doing the opposite side of water, because that is also what I do, is, if you wish to say, on my spiritual side, I am a Sufi Muslim of the Naqshbandi Tariqa. And the prayers that I learned that we do into water are also what helped me facilitate and get the understanding of putting together, if you wish to say, science and Gnosticism of my own personal observations of living in the forest, to hadiths and sunnahs, drinking certain waters that had certain vibration tones put into them through prayers. It's one of the reasons why I got into what I was doing with such was myself, when I was 28, I was diagnosed with stage 4 sarcoma, and I was supposed to die a couple of years back. I'm past my expiration date. I don't have lung issues like I did before from doing the stuff that I'm doing, and me being my own guinea pig before I would test it on my mother, because when my mom was a couple years younger than me, when she was 25, is when the sarcoidosis first attacked her lungs, and that's what it did to me, and was looked at allopathic medicines as sarcoma. And I had to explain to them, have ACE2 receptor tests and all that malarkey that goes with expressing to somebody that I have a D-dimer issue. While studying about making dimers or ionic metal fluids was a really propagation or understanding for myself to know about surface plasma and resonance, of understanding how my body metabolizes the vitamin D or the different metals that it can uptake of such on the ionic or bulk session, to why my body would attack itself, if you wish to say, or I would get sick, or my mom would get sick, or other persons around me would get sick, unless I had that form either in a crystal or in water that had that in it, or written, or Dr. Emoto's experiments of showing it formulated, or dowsing and dousing water, but yet dousing the water with a picture of the molecular structure or the chemical bond or the chemical makeup of a certain substance that on the bulk would make me sick, but by doing such I could take it in that form. I've done so many different documentations on myself and others, if you wish to say, the same as the Malcolm Ray cards. If you've ever studied into him, where they have the circular cards to where you can put
Electromagnetic field.
a cup of water or whatnot, if you wish to say, and it will be potentized, the same as if you were using a
Yeah.
Hieronymus
No, I
machine
understand. And
or
I did
radionics
even
device.
laughing yoga. It was, I took water to a laughing yoga class for that same reason.
Yes.
And that was a little bit light-hearted, better than the real solemn form. But I know what you mean in terms of
And like
the way that the brain works. And again, I honestly think that the high levels of brain function act as a receiver for clear coming into the body. And better than that, it's a win-win situation because it improves the performance of the brain as a continuing receiver of the energy.
And so on that note, on the nanotubes, trying to help my mother not have dementia at the age of 30 up to now, she's in her 60s, because neurosarcoidosis releases the same tau or damage of a dementia patient or someone with Alzheimer's. It's been oh man, it's been interesting activating certain parts of the body. So myself, what I specialize in, fully autonomous self-organizing systems, what my thesis is about is the A to B to Z transition, the 0-point energy that your DNA strand uses to do such. My friend Jamie Lunkley, who I posted some of her work and helped her with her thesis, and with her thesis being accepted, I know my work will be accepted now even more. The same with your work now, because she had and used the same information and persons that we'd studied with and about that talked about this work about almost 200 years ago, but has not been applied. And so my friend, that energy channels that you're talking about, she proved the Pfeiffer mechanism. This is one of the things that has not been proven, but has always just been hypothetical until 2018, when my friend's work was accepted and she became an accredited scientist. Because our high school, we had to do senior projects. It took her 22 years, and I'm still trying to get my work accepted. So I'm going on 27 years now. She proves how the TRP1A receptor site is activated by the menthol, and be it how menthol or the TRP1A receptors is only accepted or in mammals. You can activate that by, we did a test with her showing in the lab. You can potentialize water with, say, the energetic form of menthol, and the body will react in the same manner.
No,
Do you understand? And that activation has been accredited. It's been shown. It's a science that's been, it's changed things. So if you studied into it, I could get you in touch with her. Monsanto got a hold of her. They just moved her just April from California to Texas. So unfortunately, she's working.
I'm happy. Hugely respectful of people who come up with original observations and
shown how
try
the body
to put them into a bigger picture.
She has shown how the body does the stuff that you're trying to show also. And myself. Her work has been accepted. And if you understand, the Pfeiffer mechanism is also what has been trying to use with homeopathy, but be it that no one knows how to say anything or the mechanism of something. You say in the state of California, you can't say that this will help someone unless you can prove the mechanism. I'm trying to express to you, I know the mechanism of my stuff, and also my friend has shown and proved my mechanism. But also, I can help prove your mechanism and the things on how The Kelia activates the TRP1A receptor up through 4. Those are the things that change our DNA strand and heal a person or reverse the cancer or so forth. And the observations that you've explained to me that you've seen with the Kelia stuff that people have used, or the samples of persons that you're saying that you've seen and know that works, it's through these activations, and that work has now been accepted. It can be proven of things if you understand the such. The work can be done in California and across, at least in the United States field, but also across the world. You can actually prove the mechanism for homeopathic devices, be it water-based or essential oils, which, as you know, an essential oil in a water, essential oil is not doesn't do anything on the body until it's in a solvent. Therefore, it works upon the Piper mechanism. If you don't understand that, then it might be why there's been issues with things and so forth. So the thing that I was talking with John Hutchinson and other stuff like that with his work, and why they didn't understand the way that it worked, because he was facilitating on water. Since you were asking, like, what inspired me about this was, again, the way that my eyes see, I can see in the persons. I watched my daughter, my first child, grow inside her mother's womb, and seeing John Hutchinson's work when I was a kid on CBS or PBS before they changed the way TV is now and not show anything, I was able to see the radio frequencies. I've been talking with him about it. I could see the frequencies that it was using that were transmuting and making the wood do what it did, where it combined the different metals to the different corks and stuff that it had done. So I've sent him pictures, and he goes, "You're getting the same stuff that I've done." And I said, "Yeah. How is this possible if I'm using a flame, but you're using, the signatories that you're making, which are conducive?" Which I explained to him. Yes, it is completely. You're right. Conducive to the longitudinal waveform that you make gives the energy propagation to cause a transmutation, either in a subject or a material that you're trying to make, to get a healing aspect for a person, or the opposite, because you can also hurt someone doing this stuff, which I've learned doing it myself, where I've this last several years has been reaching out to other scientists doing the stuff that I'm doing in the energy waveforms, and trying to help them make metamaterials to where they're not making themselves sick or their clients or the environment that they're in, because you leave fossils, the energy form doesn't get out of your body, or you can't wash it out of your clothing when you oxidize certain things into different transmutations. It can become toxic for other persons or throw people into heavy metal toxicities.
Okay. Oh, good. It's been phenomenal. I was not aware that you are so advanced when it comes to the all the different minerals and their pureness and so forth. I've given you the sense that I think things are going to become available now for wider application, and the science will go further. I
would
think
love
it's
to
terrific.
come down and sit with you and talk with you in person, figure out how to do that.
Yeah, well, I don't mind one day making a visit up your way. I mean, I love to see when you're out in the wild, outdoors with Maria. It's it really, you're a survivalist, and it's nice, nice to see. I so appreciate where your heart is to try to help people, and I still honestly don't fully understand how you're making the flame, but I do understand that you see the different structuring of these different minerals depending upon how hot they get and the rate of cooling. And so I also understand that there's synergy. Activated water will activate crystals, but the reverse then. The activated crystal will activate water, come back to activate water.
Yeah.
What you said about the fluorite is interesting, because fluorite crystals are becoming popular. There's some gentleman in Denmark I had some interaction with, where he was activating crystals and then using water in the shape of an 8. So it would go like an infinity sign. And it wouldn't be just one level, it would be stacked one level and stacked on the next one, next one, next one. And in the centers of the 8 number, it pack it with this fluorite that had been activated, and then the water would be improved. What was nice about him is that he did start to do good controlled studies. Wasn't so good was, again, trying to pattern activities and all that. But if I had to look from the point of view of MIO, I'd say that the heated volcanic rock material from Japan in small pellets has proven itself to be hugely beneficial in major rice study, as well as other studies going along. Mm-hmm. And of the clinical use product, the product from Argentina, if we can get that into the country, that's a very good product because it's made under GMP facilities and so forth. And there's assurance of it being injected into patients in addition to being available as a spray and so forth. And both of that says that one arm should be actual application because information that's not being used is not very useful. But what resources you have to continue to explore your nuclear activations and so forth, and absolutely explore your.
Do you know of Mark Leclerc, John? I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak over you. Do you know of Mark Leclerc's work?
No, I don't know Mark Leclerc's. No.
If you look up Mark Leclerc, the Leclerc effect, it's a gentleman that specializes in low nuclear reactions and making reentry jet water crystals, which I learned how to do also, which I show people how to do.
Let me do that. And can you send me or spell his name for me because I don't know if I got it.
Mark.
Yeah.
MARK. LECLAIR. He's where we get all these crazy ass materials that have come out the last 20 years, and also drugs that they use where they use reentry jet water crystals and are able to transmute DNA to place metamaterials, if you wish to say, another material inside of another material, or to slam, say, one isotope of a material in the plastic and get diamond. So his work came out in the mid-90s after this other gentleman, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were doing palladium in a how do you say that properly? A calorimeter, I think is a
calorimeter. Yeah,
calorimeter. They were using a calorimeter and using palladium mixed, and they were doing. It took them 6 weeks. They didn't really realize it, but they were able to transmute and get more energy out than what they were. They're the ones. Their study in 1989 that was broadcasted, or what is at the title of my group that I have made, is all the government information about Liner since 1989. It's where the fusion reactors and so forth come from. What I do is I collect the water that comes out of my flame, because I'm making hydrogen, if you wish to say, in the way that hydrogen is made, where you get oxygen also, so I get water.
Yeah. No, I got particularly out of Brown's gas.
I get water that comes out, and it's a higher form than Brown's gas. Because Brown's gas.
Understood. No,
like I was saying, I use the. My wife has the same cell with sodium chloride, and you can't, with Brown's gas, melt a titanium crystal down. You can't melt glass. You can't melt obsidian. You darn sure can't take clay dirt like you have pieces of and melt it to another crystal and get what are called tinin crystals, with only those white little crystals are what comes when lightning strikes. Henceforth, what showed that there was an atmosphere on Mars, because they found those on Mars. So that's the other thing I've been trying to ask is, how hot is that flame getting if I'm able to melt what is considered clay, which is broken down obsidian, back into a glass, let alone back onto pumice, and melt it into a glass? when the base of it is not of such. And in the wild, you cannot find lava rock that looks like where the flame is hit. Or the moldavite that's on there, which I don't believe is a meteorite, because if my flame is able to hit it, then and melt it in seconds, like literally seconds. It only takes me a couple seconds to melt that stuff. It's not hours or any of that. It all depends on the type of vibration, if you wish to say, I'm emitting in myself. But that's another thing. I use a water trap for like an oxygen machine.
Yes.
And I collect the byproduct that happens that goes back in. Like in a lot of my videos where I'm explaining, I go, the ions that are coming out and hitting the anode that's on the out that I'm holding, if you witness, you can see stuff going back into the flame, going back into my reactor. And the stuff in my reactor changes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it also changes in the water trap. And the stuff in the water trap I collect and I put in bottles and I give to people. And I asked, what is this? Because some of the stuff, like the scooterite mix that I'd made, it takes almost a month if you shake it up for it to settle. And I go, that's a trip. To some stuff, if I have a light next to it and I try to take a picture with it, my camera won't pick it up. It blocks it. There's a lot of different, like, interesting, like I said, I had to study surface plasma and resonance because that tells you what an actual metal is. But also it's intrinsic, like knowing its absolute gravity of the mole, if you wish to transmute it back into its bulk from an ion, because your surface plasma and resonance will tell you what the ionic state is. You know, it's like amethyst. It's of the ultraviolet light spectrum we can't visibly see with our eyes, but because it's trapped ionically, if you wish to say, as an impurity in the quartz, we call it amethyst. But if you give that to someone and they rub it that has any type of chemotherapy, it fades as if it was been left in the sun. Have you heard of that or done that?
No, it sounds fascinating. But
it will literally change on that person. The same with smoky quartz or citrine. The same with veterans that have gone through stuff, or with the high frequency weapons that we're using. We've noticed I have letters from families, man. These people tried to arrest me for my work and block me up. I have letters from these families that wrote to the judge saying, please not to do such. Like, it's been interesting, John, trying to get this information.
I
don't
understand.
care to have this
in
stuff
the same
patented.
category as you are, for sure.
I want everyone to be able to know and understand and see that if I can do it, they can do it also. Because the byproduct that people are interested in, because I'm showing how to actually make gold and so forth in your own house, or silvers or different minerals that you can take and do the reverse of the industrial level of how they electrolytically extract rare earth minerals from ore. You can transmute it and make it back into a bulk aggregate and go walk into the store and get paid now for it. They're really trying to suppress that side, but the thing that I've been trying to express and show is the intrinsic rattle, or what you call as kelia. What I've been trying to express to the person is that intrinsic,
I like your word rattle for vibration.
That intrinsic rattle, that reason why we don't have to think to breathe, to where if we make it just right, we can put it in a vial. That one thing will program everything. It doesn't need to be injected to a person. The person just has to get it next to their self, and through sympathetic resonance, their body encodes themselves, changes their TRP receptor. 1 through 4 changes their interstitial water, which is our largest organ, changes that H3O2 water, that exclusion zone water, expresses out the impurities, and you literally see a person be healed. There's a gentleman, Vivek, that we last did this with in India from our house, and sending him that energetics, and me formulating with my friend whose work has just been accepted, and she going, you're right on track with that. And me saying if he had a flesh-eating bacteria that we doused and came up with, otherwise homeopathy in India didn't understand what it was, and his allopathic doctors weren't able to figure it out. We doused, his body said what the intrinsic rattle disturbance was that was making it to where he was not of himself, if you wish to say, and what would balance him or bring him back into focus, if you wish to say, canceling or annealing that bacteria. Otherwise it was hurting him and contagious. we're able to give that information back to the person, and he's been healed for it over a year now. He still sends us information, so forth. And again, my friend Jamie Lunkley, from her having her work accepted and expressing to me that on that field level is the only way something like that could have happened. It's why we're trying to express to you also. If one, like I was trying to say to John, if one understands that level, which not, then you can start seeing in a different pattern the finite that helps that Kelia become and the body take it in. There were those persons that you were stating where their stuff is accepted from Argentina, they'll be able to put it just next to where, say, in the room, like I have clients that they make skincares that just have my stuff that I take from the water trap and have it in the room. And now they sell their product, but what I'm stating is, in the aspect like what you have a patent on, is you should be illustrating to those persons is why not take their stuff to a higher level to where they just have to have it in a vial in the storage room where the IVs are, and have just give saline that's programmed with that information from that stuff that they made, instead of it have to go in the body in bulk.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm all very keen on pouches and bracelets and so forth with water. I mean, that's a good way to remind people of what's happening and encourage them to be somewhat more optimistic about the events and so forth. I mean, and again, whenever I can get this stuff going, I'd love to be able to see resources go your way to just continue your experimenting to your heart's content, because there's a need. As I said, the center that has some 900 people a day being serviced one way or another. And again, they're businesses that people want to use to survive, but the science is beautiful because it's just an eye-opening understanding the way nature works. And the more we look for it, the more evidence there is of energy fields passing through everything. I mean, there's a lady takes photographs, and her camera picks up images that she can't see, but the images are there, like halos around lights, but not just regular, easy to explain physical halos, but actual dynamic, irregularly shaped changes. So there's a lot of activity in the environment that we're not aware of. That would be a good segment. But what you've done for me is extended, from high school through all your career, understanding minerals and understanding that they can be modified, and your sense of heat is beyond what most people have in terms of temperature. You're looking at modification of these minerals using other energies, like people used to describe Brown's gas as a way of supplying a lot of electrons, and then the electrons would lead to the heat. You're making somehow your metal flame, the metal flame, providing something other than heat to make the changes. Whether we can do the same with the kiln, I don't know. I have seen people in Los Angeles in the gold recovery process take it up to 3,000 degrees centigrade in little cubicle crucible type setup. So you can get it pretty high.
But they're not holding it in their other hand.
They're not holding it. No. I mean, what you're showing is that you have another means of energy transfer that's not mediated by heat as such. But that makes sense. I mean, there's no heat in radio transmission, but it still is a source of energy. So heat component that we sense.
My wife made a good point on this. She had stated on the heat issue and also on the kiln. I had forgotten about this also. All those different materials on there all have a different heat point, and be it that they're fused to the pumice, if one was to do that same in a kiln, they would shatter or explode.
Well, some would, but let me just take it the way I look at it, which I haven't done yet. But if you just put pumice into a kiln and you set the temperature 1,200 degrees, some would melt and some won't. And I wrote down at one stage the melting temperature of the major components, I mean, the different minerals, and they begin to melt. I'm just trying to think which one was particularly high. The zeolites are higher, I think. I mean, the melting point for humic fulvic acids is just way down a few hundred degrees. But when you get into the...
What is titanium? Because you have titanium on your piece. You have moldavite. You have techite. You have fulgurite, iron, and clay. You have a peridot that is melted to it. You have a labradorite piece that's melted to it from your feldspar. Since all the things that were in their study, I put all of them and more. You have 4 different types of tourmalines. What are their melting points? And for them to fuse to that?
Yeah, no, well, again, they're all... They don't have accurate measures, but the estimates are around 900 to 1,000 for the lowest, to up to 2,000 or so for the highest. So they give ranges because they're not pure material. But if you take the typical one that people are using, 1,100, 1,200 degrees centigrade, what it will do is melt some of the components and leave other components intact. Then you'll reform because the liquid component will coalesce into a bigger domain.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm asking is, and what I stated before, is you get peridot from a piece of pumice. That's what mother rock is. I melted it back into the pumice and the peridot. I can send you the links and pictures so that you understand what I'm talking about and what those crystals are. What are each one of their melting points? If you'd like to look online, and again, a kiln won't reach that, and be it that they have the different heating points. If you were to take it to the heat of it to be able to do such in a kiln, if a kiln could reach such, those who have lower heating points than the higher ones would be completely melted down, would they not?
Yeah, but they
you
melt
understand
down.
What I'm saying?
But then they
hear what I'm saying. They would melt completely down if you were trying to do what I did in a kiln, let alone holding it in my hand.
Oh yeah, no. Let me just one more time. There's no question that you are finding a source of energy that is able to modify the materials, but it's not expressing itself as infrared heat. It's unique, fantastic. I mean, that's what you're doing. My point still, though, is that the materials were found, volcanic rock material, when heated, were found to be better in agricultural applications than if they were not heated. The other approach that people have taken with mica particularly was to use either sulfuric or might have been nitric acid. Yeah, nitric acid, I think, because that's the other approach to try to get something that would dissolve one component but not other components.
You're pulling the metal out of the mica.
Yeah, but with mica, I mean, that whatever that compound is,
they're pulling the metal out of the mica. It's like mica with lithium in it is called lepidolite, so it's purple. It's what I give to people that have lithium deficiencies or are on their phone too much, because the lithium ion in the battery is the same as the lithium ion that is inside of the lepidolite, which is this mica, but purple. Mica is called mica because of the metal impurities. So using that acid...
Let me still come back. I mean, I say talk about kilns, that's for sure.
Yeah.
In Japan, there's always been people making swords in Japan have beautifully hot furnaces that can melt the steel, so they can then fashion it into the swords. But just practically speaking, the kiln has overall value. But that's been what the approach has been, to pulverize the grain and then heat and then repellet, and that's a good useful material. So that's what that's the starting point of people having a practical application. And my sense of it is that the process is leading to partial melting of the material. The material that has a lower melting point will melt. The ones that have a higher melting point won't melt. So if you put the temperature at the right level, you'll then get a rearrangement, and that can add to
you'll get something that is brittle,
absorbing activity, water activating activity. And that's still theoretical, but that's my theoretical construction. What I'm more aware of now than I was, that your heating is fundamentally more interesting than my talking about heating, because you're heating in a manner that is not reflected in the infrared temperature, skin sensitive temperature, but there's a different type of wavelength coming out.
Let alone using a clear glass and having the ion of the metal fuel that I'm using be infused into that glass or material that I'm using,
in a gas form,
and or transmute it.
Yeah,
how I was saying for you to look into the why I was saying
glass
why I was saying
becoming electrostatic is fascinating.
Why I was saying for you to look into the Leclerc effect, because I think it's interesting that if I'm just making Brown's gas, which just gives you oxygen and hydrogen, and water is a byproduct when your flame is heating something, how is there being a color change or a fusion into the borosilica glass where you see the different metals and color changing, like where it looks like you're getting a glass pipe from a smoke shop?
No, I'd love to see that. But let me tell you again, my take on Brown's gas is that what is an interesting component is not the separate oxygen or hydrogen gases, but H2O that is no longer bound to another H2O molecule, so it enters in the vapor phase. And then when you look at electrolysis, you see the anode and the cathode, but right in the middle, you see a whole big stream of bubbles coming up between, like halfway between the ones. And
no, the way that I do my
John,
the way that I do my stuff,
molecule.
like I show videos, is I don't have bubbles in my stuff. It doesn't look like my reactor's on. There's no bubbles, there's no foam or nothing like that. With that reaction, that's caused by sodium chloride, what people using as a catalyst. Again, I don't use that as my catalyst.
No, let me be clear. And I
if you understand.
that
I don't get foam like that. That's where
I understand that people can make drugs
yeah, it's called magnolosis. It's through electrolysis with magnets.
Yeah, and you can make it even in distilled water. That can be there. And there's a whole lot of interesting work taking same poles of magnets and forcing them against each other. That's a good way of, I think, getting clear into the area. There's clear everywhere in the atmosphere, and people can simply have hyperbaric air, hyperbaric oxygen, hyperbaric air will bring about clear. So anything where you create electrical charges will bring Kalia in. It's just like it's everywhere. So that's the best my understanding of it. And it's a free, abundant energy source for everybody, and it can be carried by water and other liquids and other compounds. And what you're saying, and it may even be true, it can be a source of heat to help melt other compounds. And that makes sense also. That might be one of the transformations. Certainly the low-level nuclear transformation, transmutations. Again, all it takes is energy. So there's no reason to think it has to be heat if you can do it in ways that don't have heat. Again, that's the sense I have of you're well aware of that, because that's the way you describe what you're doing. And from a practical point of view, I don't think that people can make large volumes of material, but they can, with their kilns, make material that is beneficial in agriculture, and there's no reason why farmers are not using that relatively simple approach. And that simple approach is not for them to do it, but they do it a bit when they make biochar. That's what they're doing. And they're making biochar is simply heating in the absence of oxygen, which was no different than what Edgar Casey used to do with his animated ash. I mean, it's all pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
But what I'd love, Ezekiel, if I could ask you the favor, you've covered a lot of topics, and I appreciate Maria being helpful listening. If there's a chance to put some of them in message form, email is probably better for me than Facebook. But I would, and I'll then try to send stuff back. I will go to a conference in October and talk a bit about activated water, Kalia. I haven't mentioned to you yet, just trying to do electrostatic attraction and show that sometimes it just doesn't occur. I'm comfortable with that concept of limiting electrostatic attraction being a measurable force. And I think the fundamental concept that positive and negative electrical charges have to be kept from annihilating each other by fusion makes good sense. So that's there. And even that energy explains the energies and some of the energy transfer, some of the chemical reactions in which there's energy transfer. So that's been kind of where we're up to. But I so appreciate the original activities and studies that you're doing, and absolutely phenomenal the fact that you can use your energy to essentially transmutate material, and that there's a good motivation for helping people with using that energy. And that's what I sense. And people are in need of it, particularly if it elevates some higher level of brain functioning.
Indeed.
Okay. Look, as always, I just have and take it as your absolute thing, enormous admiration for the way you are making contributions, and way beyond the GANs technology and so forth. And I appreciate you made some personal sacrifice for the science that you're doing. And yet you have more than a lot of people in terms of a good relationship. And keep up, keep up your good work. And I'll try to make a point one day of visiting that way, even if it's a vacation for me. And I'll go back over and relook at the gifts that you did provide and get a better understanding of some of the compounds in it. My feeling was, again, that the science is the one frontier, the practical application is another frontier.
Yes. The things, the things that I had sent to you, what they were described as an environmental harmonizer. So exactly what you were asking me for is what they were set for. For if you understand what I'm stating as an environment.
I understand what you're saying.
As an environmental harmonizer is the application as you're describing as them putting the 40,000 pellets on the 100 acres and so forth. Those things that I'd sent you, one was, say, the smaller piece was for a personal piece. Why I had made it specifically out of a piece of shungite was where you could actually place it into your water or use it when you're around electronics and other things like that, or to help structure water, or if you had pain or whatnot, any issues or whatnot that you could place in the mind subjectively, but without being able to, or having to place your hand physically over where that location is, manipulate that part of the conscious realm, the where that field that's around the body that I'm talking about also, that encompasses Kelia, that you see people in my videos and observations where they start asking, like, what's touching me? What's moving me? Through working with the stuff. That's how I'd like to do a video chat with you or whatnot, to have you work with the specimens, because there's a way of, if you understand chirality of putting, you have to put the nut and bolt on by turning it the same way. To put the bolt on the nut, it has to go the same way as taking it off, the same way as putting it on. So there's a way of, if you wish to say, activating your body's connection with these pieces of going in a chiral momentum, the word activating both hemispheres of the brain, because you're using both hemispheres of your brain to try to synchronize your hand movement. If one's not able to do a choo-choo easy with their hands in perfect circles opposite to each other, I used to explain to people in the shop what was going on with the different parts of their brain that was off, that was causing such, where if one arm was lagging or the elbows up and out and so forth. There's ways of showing the different mineral contents that would show in either a Dow's or expressing to a person the different foods and or pigmentations of skin care and clothing that they were wearing that was throwing their body's biophosphorylation off, which goes into your interstitial water, which is, if you wish to say, the counter kelia that you wish to anneal. That's the thing of finding the proper frequency. That what I had an issue with the Gans people was, for one, if you understand Richard Gans, which came out in 1912, that was his thesis on what you get on the subatomic level or the ionic level of making novel gold or silver. You get those states. That is why I specialize in that. I'm able to put out writings that I put years ago before COVID, showing my work and the quiche people coming over, but then copying my methods and so forth, like I was stating, but also getting kicked out of their groups because they were saying the talk of Linner is not prohibited. You're taking us away from the talk of GANs. But I'm asking them, well, how do you get a gas in a nanosolid state if you're not doing Linner transmutation? Because you got to do Linner transmutation to get gas in a nanosolid state. That was a hypothesis from Richard Gans, where the term Gans comes from, because it's his last name. And they just started attacking me for like the last decade and a half. It's been nuts, where I'm like, dude, these people are toxic and sick. They're not making things that are healing persons. And then again, before COVID, people weren't drinking their bullshit. After COVID, people were drinking their bullshit, and people are still reaching out to me and my wife and asking us to make.
Interesting. And you got a good sense of history, so I did not know that Gans in 1912
Yes, it's been around since that time, where there's been a huge plagiarization of the people in our fields and the works and so forth,
no.
where I'm like, hey, hold on a minute. How are you guys using this term and saying this methodology, but you're not doing it right? And if you're using sodium chloride, you're using salt, you're putting zinc and copper together, those ions together, when they come as a colloid, that makes cooperite. You're not talking about that. You're saying that it's zinc and copper somehow separated and somehow is a gas in a nanosolid state.
No, I understand
I'm going,
that they don't know it, but I did not know there was history.
yes,
That word Hansi was again made up for the name of the person Juan, which means John. Hans is John, Hansi John. So interesting.
There's a bunch of back history. That's like the link of that older couple. They had started making a food a food and health. They're in my. They used to be in my Kelia group. They used to be in my kinetic energy group, where a lot of the people that were in the Quiche Foundation, when I got kicked out of Golden Age of Gans, a couple other groups that I was in, they jumped over into mine, and I started showing people that you can, through sympathetic resonance, if you make your stuff right, you can make, if you wish to say, food GANs. But not the way that they're doing it, where they're literally taking food in a blender, blending it down, sending it through filters, and then taking the last filtration of it and putting it in water and calling that food GANs. And it molds and everything, and I'm going, what in the world are you people doing? Like, that is not what the concept was. That's not at all what it's talking about. Two, their GANs, if they state it, changed colors after being used on a sick patient or client to discord it. And I'm asking them, well, if you took in my statements that this stuff is conscious, why would you take your friend that just took a sickness out of a person and throw that and discard that into the environment? Where's the health and safety in that? Like, what is that going to transmute in the environment? You know, once it gets in the landfill and you get a collection of this stuff, because I have several recordings of the gentleman that runs that talking about they were flushing this stuff for years before they changed their mythology since COVID, that they would flush it into the streams. And it's one of the reasons why we got global warming and other stuff like that, because we got a whole bunch of, if you wish to say, metals in the rivers that they were talking about in China, that they had them. They have a plant in Arizona. They have a plant in Texas, pumping this stuff, doing the stuff that they're doing, but changing the environment. And anything that's in the groups, be careful, John, because in their groups and so forth, if you add any stuff, their stuff, they'll take your shit as theirs. Like, they have this thing as intellectual property like stuff in their little bylines. Any interaction with these people, like, be super careful, dude. Super careful messing with those people. It took me years to get my stuff back to show that it was my stuff. Otherwise, they were trying to say it was theirs. And I was like, no, man. I am the originator of this stuff. I make this like such. You guys make this shit like that. I've never told anyone to drink the product. My whole thing is specifically to make something where you have it forever. Because if you have to keep making something from a material, the earth only has so much of that. So why not be able to make it like off of Willy Wonka, the incredible Godstopper that never goes away? Like, make something where if you're truly about health, that's where my background is, watching my mom and myself go through getting chopped and believing someone else that was practicing on me. Where I realized if I just practice on myself, I can heal myself instead of this person doing this shit to me with these compounds that have side effects. To where if I figure out how to do it on the energetic level, which is talked about like in Edgar Cayce, so on and so forth, Madame Bukowski, Golden Dawn, other things like such. Why I got into Gnosticism and started understanding about sigils and encoding in water and like Sai Baba, so on and so forth, seeing how the radionic device's patent can literally just be used as an energy waveform guide to program water if I wanted to with it. I mean, it's just, there's all these different things that are history and have backgrounds, have patents to things. But myself, I don't want a patent for something. I just wish to have this information out there for others to see that if they just by chance take the risk of saying no to the doctor's pill and yes to their own intuition and activate their own ace, own kelia, own intuition, and intrinsic rattle, whatever you wish to call it, to bring themselves back to in their own health instead of thinking externally. That is going to do it for them, because on all these cases, even the examples that you talk about and the examples that I talk about, it was all up to that person themselves to make themselves healthy.
Because in the first place was the mind that got them out of that
And
balance.
like my wife is saying, is up to the person themselves mind that got
Yeah,
them in
no, I
balance.
agree.
But
I
it's
totally
also
agree.
their own
And
mind that accepts your words, my words, after we're dead and gone. Persons that are able to help keep this going on to where people understand that it's just simple, just energy. That if we just process it just a little bit differently, we can get back to health. It's not that hard. It's not hard at all to do the things that all of us are doing or have accepted, but it's just that simple thing of realizing it's these, like I said earlier, we had to start stocking goji berries, um, different dates, figs, giving out people lithium orotate, apples, raw cacao, different things like that to help people's mind state be activated through the aromatic bee groove, turn on the TRP 2 and 3 ion, change that DNA pattern in themselves that was messing up, to allow their mind to conceptualize this stuff, because they weren't getting it from their diet and from their environment that there were, from their people that were around them, which comes up as negative influences, which brings a person's, if you wish to say, attenuation down. Because if you think of Edgar Cayce, he had a whole bunch of naysayers around him, he never really would have opened up the way that he did. You know what I'm saying? How a lot of people are. So it's really, with the way things are, it's really beautiful. That's the thing, that the Quiche Foundation is somewhat open the door up to your work, my work, other persons that are doing stuff in the real, is because so many people are getting tricked by them. So many people can be brought home to the truth.
Yep. No, that's right. That's a good thing. So this is we'll keep more conversations. Do send us anything that comes to your mind, including a person who taught Abrams about radionics. Would be interesting to know that bit of history. But look, I think I've got to more or less cut it there. But I have such a fondness for what you're doing, and just a big supporter, and the good will come from it, and it would extend from you, your mum, to many other people.
John, I treated myself with your dye treatment, and I can contest that it works, because I cured myself of autism I was born with.
No.
Do you understand? That's why
I don't know that we even need the dye treatment, but what you did see, if you did see it, is that fluorescence that can occur in the body.
So I started teaching people about that. I
Uh-huh.
started teaching people about the biophosphorines and other things like that, and how your body communicates, and how the interactions with the crystals, how all that stuff works. That by doing that treatment to me, it helped me.
Okay.
And
Well, what I can tell you is,
I thank you, sir.
my best understanding now, easier to activate alcohol than water, but it's there. The neutral red dye is a great dye, very small amounts, very, very small, that under UV light, it does radiate this energy, and that's good treatment. The mother who used to treat an autistic daughter would make a little pouch and put it against the sole of the feet of the daughter's foot for just half an hour, and her whole tongue would come up and fluoresce as a result. And she would really markedly improve her performance. And just, I'm just not a practitioner to be doing it, but I could tell the mum, and it was just very good. And so that's there. In addition, herpes simplex viruses can be treated directly with neutral red, but they can also be treated in this indirect manner. and that, and it may be that people will realize that in, by accepting the research and letting it get out there, will open up a lot of good investigators to come up with ways of helping people who are struggling with these viral infections. But having said that, it's still a pretty people are more wanting to be critical than helpful. That's for sure. But you and Maria are exceptions, and so let me thank you again for helping my understanding.
You're the first person I ever shared anyone's post on Facebook and started getting like messed with over. When I started posting your stuff on the treatments about the simian monkeys, where AIDS came from, polio vaccine, all that kind of stuff. Like 7 years ago.
Big groups set up to get rid of, to try to suppress that.
I was wow, that's what they're paid for. This guy has to be sharing real truth like I am, to where they don't want this out there. Like, seriously. Trying to share that kind of stuff, or screenshot and post it.
Do that.
I screenshot some of your work and post it, and it's like that we fact checked this, and it's like, okay. Why you guys like, I'm pretty sure if this was false information that you're saying it is, fucking, he wouldn't be able to have it out there on the internet like this.
But whatever. Anyhow, I've survived. My wife's a very good physician, still works at County Hospital. 2 daughters are both physicians. One is in palliative care at UCLA, and not at the moment, but I hope that some of the messages that we're coming out with and all that will enter into her mindset, so that it will take hold at places like UCLA, as it should, because they just don't have the ability to grasp it at the moment. But it will come. And this linkage with this big center, Terry Center, TERI, might be an opening, and getting research done. What I like is the fact that I've caught up with you in thinking about heating of humus and different minerals, and reading about that restructuring and transformation.
Bless you.
But look, let me leave it at that. I look forward to any messages you send, and any please, honestly, feel free to call. And I'm getting a bit older in the tooth than you are, but I'll try to step back and see great progress that hopefully you will make.
Inshallah, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, mate. Take care, and take care to Maria also. Thank you both.
Thank you also, brother.
Thank you, John. Have a beautiful day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that was like a 2-hour conversation. You know what I like to do?
I'm confused because he was talking about, I like your limited, the way that you have it put together, but he was saying he was going to change it. But then I guess he didn't look into the GAN stuff. That's interesting. I'm going to say that.
But there's a bit background history to that these people ain't mentioning.
Yeah.
You know what I feel like I want to do?
Not knowing, but that there's bullshit. He's just gotten bullshit from him.
Because it is.
But he wants to work still again. Wants to keep together, so I was like, man, we lost contact there for a year. I was hoping You just had the stuff set up. I don't understand what I was trying to say to you. The priorities and everything. Shit. I was seeing some other stuff. I tried in the water, if not. Like I was talking about the byproduct. But I'm sitting here holding this stuff. I don't know how to send it or show it to you without it being on Facebook, because that's what I got it off. Unfortunately.
I'll tell you on the way to my mom's.
When I research these secret societies, and I research the Bible, by the way, I'm a
Get best from me about the lava rock and other things.
When I research these secret societies, and I research the Bible, by the way, I'm a Christian.
Get best from me about the lava rock and other things.
I'm not.
Consider your opinion and other things. I send you this, brother. Treat this break.
All these secret societies, looks the
The
Kabbalah.
lava rock I harvested from Tsalagi, from Lake Tahoe Basin. And I have some from Maui to the water.
Of encoding mathematics and numbers. It is some of the most ancient knowledge that man
Now
has
he's open to
ever
things.
possessed and has been kept.
Education and stuff like that to me. Explain it to him. My inside of Gnosticism, I understand about every case, the ashes, all this stuff.
To those who have proven themselves worthy through the process of initiation.
Everyone thinks of the Kabbalah and so forth.
Nobody knows where it comes
You
from.
don't understand about
I can
what
tell
is in
you
the
that
Quran and
it
Sufism.
was there long before the Jews came
Gnosticism
along.
and
The Jews
occultism.
just took it and preserved it.
Madame
And it
Bukowski's
passed
secret.
down. It's used by everybody because it's at the heart
The voice of
of
silence.
secret knowledge.
I studied this.
Metaphysics, the real science that none of us know anything about.
Secrets of the heart.
We know
The
these
best to
people.
learn.
These
You
people
don't know
belong to
this right
secret
here that
societies.
you're talking about. Like I've been telling you for
Never
years.
dared to write down in language what they knew, what it was that they regarded. And then someone could steal it, and then the secret would be out. So
What do they do?
provide
They just think
secret
it's
systems of
scribbles.
encoding the secrets of the ancients, the knowledge, the hidden knowledge, the occult.
It's like the hadith and sunnah I played the other day.
Evil.
What I
It doesn't
focused
mean
on
the devil. It doesn't mean
is
Satan.
being able to see this crystals and the symbols and so forth in language of Adam salam. 7 crystals that he came with.
So they took this and made it
Harmonizing with Jezebel,
system of encoding
the angel that taught man
one of
about
his
minerals and so forth.
numbers. Architecture. Why did you have an organization called the Freemasons? Those guys build walls, and they wall contains a secret.
Bodies of painters, see, that's canvas.
Rhymes make it shine. Increase the star wattage with longer cycle time. Yeah, I bust the rhymes, but I customize the lines. By the looks of things, I did it just in
Hey,
time.
ready?
I march from the halls of mine, pursuing the truth.
Lava does this,
Physically,
right?
this mission objective is killing me. I
See how fast it takes from out to the lava.
Willingly The possibilities present a probable infinity.
It's like taking a molten light over a meteorite and other things and melting it in a couple seconds.
Apologize, but I can't. Who I am, try to can't budge the past.
Here we go.
Lyrics for bitches with acrylic, only fake niggas.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
How many kills you got?
Less than that. That's already melted.
So we look the same
I
from
can
the
touch it.
sky. The only time they notice the difference
I keep telling you about my stuff. You guys are into the weight. I'm trying to talk to you about the fucking energy and so forth. Intrinsical day fields and entities. The things that are looking here with us. But you into the boat and the mirror of this world. Simplicity. Come on, guys. Get your minds up. Damn. Maui and so forth. You get paradox, garnet, all those kind of things. We're gonna put this paradox and melt it into this lava rock. And this is found in lava rock. But yet, let's see how fast the word melting doesn't apply to this stuff. We'll show you transmutation, so forth. Evolution.
Make sure to stay off the main route. Satellites watch me, they think they got me. Right hands turn left shoulders around, but it's not me. Atmospheric re-entry, a flying sighting. Look like lightning striking blind. What the fuck's flying? Comparative image sharpness between artists. I don't think you know what you about to get involved in. Give you a quadrillion dollars.
I don't know if you go Cherokee and bullshit ass stuff. I ain't trying to be friends.
Sulfuric nitric acid. Eat through the labyrinth.
There's brothers and sisters.
We must take action. Basic instructions before leaving.
Out of those doing first-hand observations with their gifts, moving the fucking evolution of our consciousness and our species forward. Deal with more lifetime bullshit.
Familiar with what I'm saying. Discuss it with your chemistry professor. He'll praise it. Try quad quintangulate. Where did the signal originate? Find out more information. The internal
high frequency electricity through mercury. So forth, we can make gold. So you can do it in 20 other different minerals. Shit.
My own cousin, populace, uninformed as a populace of slaves. Watch this, didn't say it quite that way.
There's a paradox,
like that. You get the point, I'm assuming. Poet laureate exclusive. New shit.
Gym quality could have been cut.
That molten. Ain't doing that way.
I'm gonna put things away and let it on.